You're watching WHPS, Highland Park, Detroit.
WGPR Detroit, HD2.
The views and opinions expressed on the following show are not necessarily the views and opinions of WHPS, its affiliates, management, or sponsors.
My name is Watson.
And my name is Mariah.
We're 12 years old.
And we're representing Old Redford Academy Middle School. And we're here to talk about drugs. Drugs are very dangerous and unhealthy.
And they can also ruin a relationship with your loved ones. Go talk to a family member, a friend, even a teacher, or you can go to a therapist, or if you need any extra help, you can go online and find all of those.
Hashtag not worth it.
Good afternoon and welcome to Expose Under the Sun, sponsored by the Detroit Native Sun newspaper. I'm your host, Darwin Griffin, and I've got two very special guests with me in the studio today. But before we get started, our show is live, and our calling numbers are area code 868-0342, 868-0351, or 868-4336, and it's all 313 area code. Website is www.tv33whpr.com, and you're watching us live in the awesome city of Detroit, Michigan, under the auspices of the Honorable Mayor Mike Duggan, as well as the phenomenal city of Highland Park, Michigan, under the auspices of the Honorable Mayor Hubert Yap. Before we get started, just want to make one little announcement real quick. Tomorrow, the 14th Annual Health and Safety Fair is going to be conducted in Detroit on Belvedere Street. And that's going to be sponsored by the Belvedere Community Youth Block Club. And that's tomorrow, August the 17th, from 11 o'clock to 5 o'clock. And if you want to get more information, you can call 313-918-9604. And they're going to have food, entertainment, health and safety education, community resources tables that will be set up there. And this is going to be between Warren and Moffett Streets on the east side of Detroit. And the special guest that's going to be there is none other than the Detroit comedian Coco. So if you want to go and get a chance to meet Coco, and she will be there. So it should be a good opportunity for people to go and especially utilize some of the health and safety resources that they have there. But now we know that there is a lot of people that were satisfied, but then there were a few people that were not satisfied with the results of the election. Some people won their elections. Some people learned from the election, because I don't think there were any losers. And some people learned, that this was a time that there were candidates that could represent the districts that they were running in, and then there were candidates that may have fallen short of getting the support from the people in their district. One of the districts that there's a lot of conversation about now is in the 13th congressional district seat. And a lot of people really realized, too, that was a seat that was, Brenda Lawrence was in the 14th district, and her district, due to the redistricting, was eliminated. So now instead of us having 14 districts in the state, we've only got 13 districts. Brenda Lawrence chose not to run again. She chose to retire, and what she did was that it opened up the seat in the 13th after Rashida Tlaib, who is currently the congressional representative in the 13th, moved to the 12th district. So that left a vacant seat. There were 9 candidates that were running in that seat, and of the 9 candidates, 8 of them were African American, and there was one gentleman who was Indian. Now that seat was currently held, or previously held, by John Conyers. Brenda Lawrence in the 14th was the only African American that was represented in the state of Michigan in Congress when she held the 14th district seat. Now the concern was in the 13th district, where you had 8 African American candidates vying against each other, and there was also an Indian that was in that district that was also vying for that seat as well. Election day, as many of you know, was last Tuesday, August the 2nd. When the vote totals came out, the Indian, his name is Sharif Anadar, was the person that won the 13th congressional district seat, followed by State Representative Adam Hollier, followed by CEO of Focus Hope, Portia Roberson. Now, there's a lot of people that are not happy with the results, and there's concern now about whether or not if they can go and amount enough of a charge to put a candidate on the ballot in November, on November the 8th, to be a write-in candidate. And that write-in candidate, there's the toss-up now between several people, but they want to look at people that may have lost in that election on the 2nd and pick one of those names to be the write-in candidate. They're looking at those 2 that came in 2nd and 3rd, which was Adam Hollier and Portia Roberson. So now the question is, do we want to spend time and money and efforts in putting a write-in candidate on the ballot, or do we want to go and let Sharif Anadar, who is currently the Democratic representative that's going to be facing off with the Republican, Montel Bivens, in November, or do we want to have Sharif Anadar run against Montel Bivens, and if he wins, he would be the representative in Congress representing the Democratic Party. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And I've got 2 very special guests. To my right, I'll go ladies first, and you probably don't need much introduction to be able to recognize Highland Park's own Miss Alexis Ramsey. And I say the Honorable Alexis Ramsey because Alexis Ramsey is the Honorable Alexis Ramsey. She was a former school board president in Highland Park. And currently, she is the first vice chair of the Michigan Democratic Party Black Caucus. Alexis, welcome to Expose Under the Sun.
Thanks, Darwin. Good to be back.
And we've also got Percy Johnson, who a lot of people realize too, and I'll say this. Percy Johnson, as many of you know that attend Liberty Temple Baptist Church, Percy is Mr. All World at church. That's how I met Percy Johnson. That's how I know Percy Johnson, and many people in the community know Percy Johnson with all of the things that he does and he's done. And he's going to continue to do further great things in the community. I'll let Percy talk a little bit more about that. But let's talk a little bit about that right now. So we've got a lot of talk right now, Alexis and Percy, about who should represent the 13th. The question is, if you look at Montel Bivens is an African-American man, but he's running as a Republican. Sharif Anadar is an Indian man who's running in the Democratic Party. Portia Roberson is a African-American female. Adam Hollier is an African-American male. So now the question is, are you going to look at voting based on race, voting based on the party and be loyal to the party, loyal to the race, or do you feel that the candidate that you want to have have represented in Congress should be somebody who respects your values, your issues, and it might not be one of those, well, two candidates, either the Democratic person or the Republican person? I'll ask you, Percy, what's your thoughts on that?
Okay, so one thing that's really important with me are the issues. You know, the concerns that we have of getting the policies that we want that's going to help bring the resources back to our community. So on that note, I think one thing that's really important is that seems like these past couple of years we have really gone to a civic challenge to understand how policies and everything are made and happen, right? We have seen some of the votes that some of the bills that we've been trying to pass, especially one of the main ones was the George Floyd bill that we want to pass. How we have a big concern about the filibuster, which it deals kind of the Senate. The Senate is the one that will make the change in that. But then we have the John Lewis bill, to where we had the 220 votes that we needed from the House, is what we're talking about right now with our Congress positions with the 13th. And we need additional 50 votes from the Senate to get that 270 to get that policy passed. So I'm concerned about right now making sure that I can shore up the votes that it's going to take to 220 coming from the House. So on that note, I want a Democrat. You know, I feel that it's going to be important that we put a Democrat to hold that seat so we can get those numbers. I'm concerned, and the other part that I've learned from seeing how this is done, that if your party don't have the majority in the House or the Senate, issues that you want to bring to the floor and stuff that you want to happen, that party can decide we're not going to even talk about that. You know, and we saw that especially in the Senate with the Mitch McConnell. You know, I mean, we passed stuff, and when we had a majority Democrats and they had a majority Republicans in the Senate, we passed the policy, we passed the bill the way we wanted. When it got to the Senate, that they didn't even have the discussion. So now the way that we have it is it's a real fine line. It's just, you know, we just have the 50 we need for the Senate, and we got the over the 220 for the House. And so now we are seeing the importance that it seems like, for me, the Republican Party, they are strictly they passing policies with that the people are not really asking for it, because they have their own agenda of sticking with the party and not the people. And they have completely not voted for issues that we want. So that's telling me to be concerned right now would be to make sure that we shore up the Democrat seat, and that we so we can get the votes for the policies that we need to pass in the House. You know, that's number one. Now, when we're talking about possibly now having a write-in, you know, what there's a buzz in the air of possibly challenging the candidate that won in the Democrat Party, with now doing a write-in and having the numbers are there with the black voters, and seeing how they voted with the other 8 candidates, that possibility could happen if the will of the people will see that, you know, that they will want a black candidate for the Democrat elected person, you know.
But
So-
you know, the one thing that we got to make certain of is that we got to get people to get out and vote.
Sure.
Because it was less than 20% in
Yeah.
Detroit that got out to vote.
Now I thought about that, you know, too. So, but and on that note, even with the percent of the people who showed up, what we had, what 15%? Or was it
Less than
18?
20, less than 18%.
Yeah, 18%. The numbers were still there out of the other candidates under Cherie, that if it was only one black person that was the candidate, it's a strong possibility that that black person would have had all the votes to win. You know,
if you
even with the
combined
number.
a couple of if you combine candidates' votes, they would have had enough to be able to beat Cherie in the election.
More than 2-1.
Okay. Alexis, how do you feel?
Well, I feel like we should keep the seat Democratic, point blank, period. Right? You start talking about writing in a candidate, you end up splitting the vote, right, between those two Democrats that are currently sitting in those seats.
Okay.
Right? Now, I don't know Martell Bivens. I've heard him speak on several different occasions. But again, he's representing the Republican Party. On Fox 2 News, he made a statement. He said, well, what do you have to lose? Well, Donald Trump told us the same thing, and we had a lot to lose. Right now, I can't vote, I can't base my vote on black, just like you said, Percy. It's about policy. It's about issues.
Right.
It's about who do I think is going to vote in my
Right.
favor when they get into Washington, D.C. And I just feel like this write-in, or whoever may want to mount a write-in against our current nominee, I'm not in agreement with it. I think you take the loss. There was $7.6 million put behind the person who came in second. If you can't overcome with $7.6 million, good luck on a write-in.
Okay.
And science says, just basic election science, you're going to get somebody that will fill in a bubble first before they write somebody's name in. The scary part
Okay.
is we're pushing this narrative of vote black, of vote black. We know that our electorate is not as educated, right? Because we're not out here we're doing voter education, but there needs to be more voter education.
Absolutely.
So until we come together and say, look, Cherie is the nominee. He is who we're going to support. He is the Democrat currently for the 13th Congressional District. And you're playing a very, you're playing a game here that could ultimately turn the 13th Republican. And I think that's far worse than us voting for Cherie, who currently the people chose. Now, we don't have runoff voting, right? So we don't have that 30-day voting where you got to get to 51%. We don't even, so until those rules change, stand with the person who won. Has anybody sat down with Cherie? Has anybody really who's pushing back sat down and say, hey, where do you stand on these issues? Nobody's done that. They just look at him and say he's Indian. But I could swear that we all just supported an Indian who's currently our vice president. So what's the difference?
Okay.
It's time for us to unite as one, stop fighting each other, deal with what we have to deal with, chuck it up, put a good candidate up in 2 years if you believe that Cherie did not do a good job while he's in Washington, D.C., and let's keep it moving, because at the end of the day, this is not just about Cherie. This is about the whole entire Democratic ticket, and that's from the top down.
Right.
Now, that's a great point that you bring
Absolutely.
up, Alexis, because the thing is that if somebody is disappointed that their candidate is not going to be represented on the ballot in November, and they decide that they're going to sit this election out, which we definitely are encouraging people to vote. Don't sit this election out. This is imperative, because if you don't vote, you could also be losing the support from, like you said, Alexis, from the top down.
Top
from
down.
the gubernatorial candidates to the state Supreme Court candidates to some of your local candidates that are looking for your support for state rep, state senate.
And we also have local elections, like here in Highland Park. We have a mayoral race, a council,
Right.
you know, our clerk, our treasurer. So we
Okay.
have local races going on. Some people are also running for school board. So you have those people sit out because we're making a mess of it. It's not anybody else. If we all band together and say, look, we lost, it is what it is. Let's get behind the nominee and let's just make this work. I think right now we're again causing division, which is going to hurt the top of the ticket. We know that our governor, she's polling well now, but we all know polls change, right?
Right.
Messaging
Right.
changes, right?
Right.
So we don't really know right now, and we all know the woman's right to choose is one of the biggest issues.
Right.
But you also have to remember that a lot of churches are for what happened, right? They were against abortion, but I think that's one of many things that Planned Parenthood does, and I think we are not looking at the whole fact of women reproductive rights as well as male reproductive rights, right? Because
Right.
Planned Parenthood deals with both. They don't just deal with abortion, even though abortion is one of the things that they do. But they do mammograms, they do STD testing, they do hormone testing. They offer people who don't have insurance assistance.
Right. A lot of health services.
A lot of
That's-
health
that's so
that
needed.
deals with the reproductive system,
Absolutely.
male and female.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
when you go out here, all I'm saying is
Right.
that personally myself, I will not be dividing a ticket, and I will not be pushing that here in my community, even if there is a write-in. Now, if other people want to do it, that's fine. But what we're going to do, or what we're going to try to do here, is unite, be one, and make sure that from the top of the ticket down,
Right.
that
But I-
this state remains democratic. We're purple. It could go either way
Right.
at any second.
That is so
And
true.
that's real important. You know, the turn up, the participating and civic engagement is what I mean in my eyes is what I see that's hurting us in a lot of ways. You know, so that's what's key. So that's has always been something near and dear to my heart. Are encouraging people to be civically involved.
Absolutely.
And to be aware that when you don't participate, how you really hurt your community, but not being that head count by not showing up. You know, sitting out does more damage to you than voting against your best interest.
Absolutely. We look at
You
Wayne
know,
County,
I
right?
mean,
Wayne
that-
County showed up 7%.
Right.
That was the voter turnout for the primary. 7% for the entire county. We're one of the largest counties in the state, and only 7% of the people participate.
And it hurts you in so many ways because it hurts the candidates that are representing our community with the feeling of how they're going to address your issues.
Absolutely.
You know, because if you're not, you know, giving them a vote, you know, then they feel that, okay, well then I can almost do what I want to do because guess what? This community is not going to vote me out or vote me in. They, so I don't really have to put all this effort or to make sure that what I'm doing is really representing the community. Now I can come in, which we are starting to see so much of
Absolutely.
candidates going in, of making votes that's going to benefit their interests, their personal interests, instead of the interests of the community. So, yeah, we definitely have to be aware of what we're doing and what we're asking people to do, that we are conscious of making sure that we're lifting that number up.
Absolutely.
Instead of causing confusion, my sister. And you making a lot of sense, my sister. You really are. I have a tendency, a lot of ladies younger than me, to calling them my daughter, you know, because that's how I feel. I love my daughters and my younger generation, so.
I appreciate that,
in
Percy.
the
Thank you.
few minutes that we've got left, if someone has not gotten their absentee ballot and they wanted to vote in the primary, but they didn't get the absentee ballot, but they want to make sure they get absentee ballot for the general election because they know how important it is to vote in November, what do they do?
I mean, you reach out to your clerk's office the normal way. You put in your application. But what I will say is that we know, and this trouble started back when we had our previous president, Trump, when he pulled all those people out of the post office, right? So
Right.
we do know that the post office has their challenges when it comes to delivering mail and getting mail in on time.
Timely.
But what I can say is if you get your ballot, I think ballots start coming out around September 25th, I want to say.
That's the date I heard.
Okay,
Right.
around the 25th.
Right.
So I would start requesting my ballot now, wait for that ballot to come in on the 25th, and get it back in that box by the 1st. Right, as fast as
And-
you can. And if you can't do that, then I would say if you're mobilized and you're able to, I would say take it to the drop box. That is your safest way of knowing that your vote will be counted. Is either, I mean, again, put it in the post office. But if you wait too close to November 8th, then 9 times out of 10 that ballot will not make it in time for your vote to be counted.
Yeah, and the word on that is like 20 days before the due date for the election to not put your absentee ballot in the mailbox. In the mailbox, it's best that you have someone, or you take it and put it in a drop. Have somebody to get you to a drop box, throughout the city, and that's something that I feel Detroit does quite well in my eyes, of making sure that the Detroiters that live in the community, that there are several drop boxes locations. In fact, I want to say there's at least 23.
Absolutely.
Between the satellites and the drop boxes, or where you could take your ballot and drop it off. We got another 13 locations, satellites locations that are set up that start after the 25th, where you can actually get an absentee, you could go and get an absentee ballot and vote right there, and turn your ballot in, your
Early voting, period.
Well, it's using the absentee system. Because see, early, and that's something else I learned. This, like I said, I mean, since Trump been in office, man, this has been like a eye opener for civics.
Yes.
Because he's challenged everything to where now we know how certain things work. So early voting, when you speak of early voting, when you turn your ballot in, your ballot is actually counted then, that day. But the absentee system that we got, they're just ballots that are turned in, and the actual ballot is not starting to be counted until the day of the election. So
I think there's
that's
some conversations going on about that right
but
now.
you can go, but you can process the absentee ballot, 25 days before the general election, going to these different satellite locations that they have.
Okay.
And I think that's just I know other cities that don't have that number of drop boxes. They either
We
at their
have
city
one.
hall. You got to go to your city hall.
Right.
That's the only place you got.
Well, this half hour went by so fast.
Oh wow.
It did.
So we're about to wrap up. Alexis, Percy, I mean, great comments. Really appreciate you coming on the show with us today. Definitely have to have you back again before the general election, November the 8th. But you've been watching Expose Under the Sun, sponsored by the Detroit Native Sun newspaper. And if you'd like to get a copy of the Detroit Native Sun newspaper, you can contact Ms. Valerie Lockhart at area code 313-457-5944. And I just want to say again, thank you to my guests. But the main thing is make sure that when you do get your ballot, either absentee or you pick up a ballot and you actually go and vote early, as Percy said, make sure you don't depend on the postal system to not go and get your ballot in on time. As Percy said, 3 weeks before the election, if it's within that window after that time, take it in and put it in one of the ballot boxes. Again, thank you for watching Expose Under the Sun. Have a great rest of the afternoon.